The right unit of our shelves have one fixed shelf and 3 adjustable shelves to them. The first bottom shelf is set at 16 inches high from the very bottom. The rest of them, I'm going to start using the adjustable shelf peg holes at about 8 inches up, because you really don't want that bottom shelf or the shelf gap to be any closer than 8 inches anyway. So our holes will start about 8 inches up. I'm fixing a bar to the position to put this jig in place. I've got a Rockler jig for aligning the holes. We've had this in the past. You could make your own, but it's kind of nice to have this made for you sometimes. And the way this works is you've got a self-centering drill bit that bottoms out at the right depth. So what we're going to use, they have 2 different gaps distance away from the edge of the board. Can be used for either a frameless or a face frame construction. We're going to just use it as if it was frameless. Even though we are putting a face frame on it, we aren't really going to be putting any doors on. So I'm not concerned with that. I'll be using the greater distance in the front, because I don't want the pegs for the shelf supports to be too close to that front edge of the wood trim that I'm making it look a little bit beefier at 1 inch thick. So I'm going to be setting them in 2.5 inches on the front, and I think I'm going to use the 1 7/16 inches from the back. This is what the self-centering bit looks like. It has a spring on it that prevents the depth from going any further than that. This is the 5mm bit for using a smaller 5mm insert. And the way it works is I've got this bar set to make sure that the back and the front of the jig are both set uniformly. The distance from this edge and this edge to any hole that you drill in are all the same. So I've got it marked here. I'm going to be using, once you have the first hole drilled, I always like clamping it just to make sure it's nice and snug. You use your cabinet peg and slide that up. And there's either a 1/4 inch index hole or a 5mm. This is 5mm. So I'll set that into the hole. You can see that this is firm and everything else is going to be the same distance. So clamp that against the bar, and I'll continue with my holes up the side. I'm going to stop once I get to probably this area or so on the other on the top edge, because I'm going to have a shelf up here with a little bit of overhang. So the only usable thing is going to be down to about there. One set of holes for that side. Then I'll repeat the process on this side with the bar still in place, flipping that over. I can use the same distance out, same distance up. Everything's going to line up for me just fine. We have a good deal of maple stock in our wood supply that's been harvested from our own property, been seasoning in our garage or in our basement for probably about 5 or 6 years now. So we've decided that we would use this to make the framing for our project for our church. So we're going to be taking it from just rough cut, planed down one side by hand using a very large number 7 corrugated plane, and then jointed 2 sides that are adjacent so that they were square and flat, and then I'll be running it through the planer to get the second side flat. My surfaces are pretty uneven. I just wanted to make sure that everything is nice and flat, and then I'll go over it one more time with a hand plane to take out any slight imperfections that are left from the electric planer. I've cut this to size on the bandsaw, just a little bit thicker than what my final thickness will be. so that I have room to plane off this rougher edge a little bit. And I do prefer to use the hand plane for that, just like I did on the back side, because of the multi-direction of the grain, and I don't want to get it down too thin. For cutting these longer styles, I'm going to be cutting a 3/4 of an inch piece. I already have it set up to my width. I need to lower the bearing guide a little bit. I've got a feather board set up because it's such a long piece. It's going to be a little bit more unwieldy for me to grab it and support it as it comes through. So I'm going to be doing most of the pass to even things up and then turn it around and get the other end of it. So I'm going to plane both these sides down, and then I'll take off the matching side of the bookcase for the other style. So. My grain is turning here anyway. When I encounter this figured grain a little bit that tends to rise against my plane, skewing the plane sideways gives a sharper of an angle where the blade contacts, so it cuts it off a little bit differently, a little easier to manage. I'm going to be cutting down a few of the planed down and thickness boards to the width, and this is for the face frame for the church cabinet. I've decided that I'm going to go with 2 inches for the center and sides. Far right side that's going to be going up against a wall, I'm going to just leave where it is for now so that we can scribe that to fit up against the wall cleanly without any extra lines to it. So that one I'll be saving at full 3-inch width and ripping the rest down to 2 inches for all of the vertical pieces that go around. I'm going to be beefing up the look of this 3/4 inch plywood and also hiding the plies from view by adding a piece of solid maple stock to the front of each of my shelving units. And the way I'm going to do this is line them up using the Festool domino. I'm going to be using these 4mm by 20mm, very small dominoes. They'll be slightly proud on the top side, not much. Then I'll come by with a flush router bit and clean that up so it's all smooth. I've pre-finished the sides and shelves for the bookshelf and the changing table because it's a whole lot easier to finish the boards when they're still flat than after the carcass has been assembled. So now I'm ready to do the glue up. I'll be using the dominoes to glue the shelves to the side. After that, I'll put the shelf on its face, put the back on the shelves, and that'll help hold everything square.